So today we have Gobomar sir with us today to guide us through for our OSCE session and our clinical session. The clinical session is the first of its kind. We are having this today. So welcome, sir. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you. So how many students? 20 students are there. I think Divya is coordinating it, isn't it? Who is coordinating it, or Babu?
Sir, I am coordinating it today.
So I will show the slide and you can ask one of the PGs to answer, okay?
Okay, sir.
Okay. So this is an X-ray of a 30-year-old male who came with low backache. There is no neurological symptoms. So what do you find in the X-ray? Who is answering?
Akhil?
Thirty-year-old with a backache. No neurological features. He has difficulty in bending forward.
Use of shadow.
Yeah. What do you call that?
Most probably due to tuberculosis.
Yeah. So it is due to a paraspinal shadow due to tuberculosis. What are the other radiological signs you can enumerate in tuberculosis of the spine? Tell me 5 radiological signs. Agil? This is the common thing that is asked for your exam. There are at least around 12, but you just tell 5 radiological signs. If Akhil is not there, somebody else can answer. Otherwise, we will be losing a lot of time. So you have to say at least, because we are not having time. You have to say at least.
Harshita?
Collapse of.
Yeah, one is collapse. Which is the commonest feature in tuberculosis of the spine?
Dissection of.
Pardon?
Vertebral dissection. Vertebral dissection of the vertebra.
Which part is used?
Increased soft tissues.
The first is paradiscal, isn't
Joint
it?
space narrowing.
Anterior
Erosion of the
portion.
vertebra. Erosion of the inflate vertebra.
Yeah.
Joint space narrowing. Then muscles.
See, at least you should say that there is narrowing of the disc space. It is the commonest thing. Osteoporosis and destruction of the adjacent vertebra. Collapse of one vertebral body. Involvement of the posterior elements of the spine. Involvement of the anterior part of the spine. Then you can say about the rare things like aneurysm signs and other things. But at least 4 or 5 you should have in your mind just to tell. This is another sign. Bird nest appearance. Okay. Which is the commonest site of tuberculosis of the spine? Commonest site. One of you answer. Akhil.
Paradiscal.
Commonest site, whether it is
Thoracolumbar junction.
Thoracolumbar.
That it is in the thoracolumbar junction. Statistically, it is the lower thoracic spine that is more commonly affected in around 40% of cases. Okay. What are the pathological types depending upon the site of the vertebral body where it is involved?
Paradiscal.
There are 5 types. Can you?
Central. Paradiscal.
Paradiscal is one, agreed.
Central.
Central type of tuberculosis, yes.
Posterior.
Complex tuberculosis. 4.
Complete.
Complete is not there.
Apical.
No. is the anterior type of tuberculosis. And the fifth one is, which is the fifth one?
Deflation.
It is true tuberculous arthritis of the synovial joints of the spine. Now I will ask you, what are the synovial joints of the spine? Disc is not a synovial joint. So which are
Facet.
the synovial joints of the spine?
Facet joint.
Facet joint
Hypofacial joint.
and one more. It is C1, C2. Joint between C1 and C2 is a synovial type of joint. So the commonest one is paradiscal. Why does it affect that area commonly? What is the theory behind that?
Infection spread through the epiphyseal
Pardon?
artery. Infection spread through the epiphyseal artery.
Epiphyseal artery. What is the peculiarity of this artery as far as the embryology is concerned regarding the development of the vertebra? So during development, the inferior half joins with the superior half to form the vertebral body, isn't it? Therefore, the same vessel supplies the lower part of the upper vertebral body and upper part of the lower vertebral body. That is why when these organisms come, it involves this area in the paradiscal areas. So you read about the embryology of the vertebra. Okay, there are 5 different types. Okay. What do you call the central type of tuberculosis? Collapse that is seen in the central type of tuberculosis. The name? The name that is given for collapse that is seen in central type of tuberculosis. It's called as concertina collapse, isn't it? The same collapse can be seen in eosinophilic granuloma of the spine also. Concertina collapse. Tell me the common complications of tuberculosis of the spine. Yeah, you ask somebody.
Paraplegia. Paraplegia.
Neurological features, paraplegia is one. Then
Cold abscess.
cold abscess is another. Then
Fracture.
Stability.
one of you has tell.
Just instability.
Third is deformity, isn't it?
Oh.
So neurological features like paraplegia. Second is cold abscess, and third is deformity. Regarding this, you should know everything regarding paraplegia. What are the types of paraplegia?
Extension flexion.
No, that yes, you can say
Early onset paraplegia, late onset paraplegia.
early onset paraplegia and late onset paraplegia. You read about the conditions that produce early onset paraplegia and conditions that produce late onset paraplegia. Which one is having a good prognosis? Early onset or late onset?
Early onset.
Pardon?
Early onset. Early onset.
Early onset, because late onset occurs around 30 to 40 years after healing of the lesion, and it is due to stretching of the cord over a severe kyphotic default. Okay, and now coming to the cold abscess. How can you get an inguinal or a swelling or an inguinal cold abscess in a lower thoracic tuberculosis? Okay, what Soyer's fascia? How does it enter into the Soyer sheath? What do you call that? What are the openings in the diaphragm through which
Medial lumbricostal arch.
medial arcuate ligament? Then what are the 3 openings in the diaphragm through which the pus can track?
Lateral arch.
Lateral arch is the opening of what? Lateral one is the opening of Quadratus lumborum, isn't it? Median is the aorta and the inferior vena cava. Medial is the psoas, and the lateral is the quadratus lumborum. So through this, the pus will track downwards. Okay. And in the quadratus, if it goes through the quadratus lumborum, where does it go? When it track along the quadratus lumborum or the lateral umbilical arch or the arcuate ligament, where does it usually present?
Anterior abdominal.
Retronephric space.
Triangle of Petit's triangle, isn't it? So next question will be the boundaries of the Petit's triangle. Who is going to tell that? See, this is the way the questions are asked, because once we relate to the same term, then it's anatomy, a little bit pathology, like that will go. So you have to read about the boundaries of the Petit's triangle. Okay.
Lateral.
Lateral is by the
Obliquous. Laterally, external obliquous muscle. Laterally.
Yeah, that is true.
Medial border of external obliquous muscle, and medially by the latissimus dorsi.
Yeah.
Inferiorly by the iliac crest.
Yeah. So that is the Petit's triangle where it usually present. A lumbar tuberculosis patient comes with an abscess in the ischiorectal fossa. How does this track to that area? So this usually through the pudendal nerve. So in the gluteal region, it can go along the superior and inferior nerves and vessels and present in that area. And in the perineal area or the track along the pudendal vessel. So tracking of cold abscess is one thing which you should know. How does it track in the upper dorsal spine posteriorly? Anteriorly, how does it track along the intercostal vessels? Intercostal vessels have got two branches. The lateral branch and the other is the anterior branch. The lateral branch usually present in the axillary line, anterior axillary line. Therefore, the abscess can be in the anterior axillary line. The anterior branch, which usually by the side of the sternum. So it doesn't usually cross the sternum. So if you see an abscess in front of the sternum, it is unlikely to be a cold abscess from a spinal lesion. It can be due to a tuberculosis of the sternum, but not due to a cold abscess, because the anterior branch will not cross the sternum. So posteriorly, it has got a medial and a lateral branch. That is the dorsal rami. The medial one usually present around 2.5 centimeters from the midline in the upper 6 thoracic vertebra, and the lower one around 7.5. These are given in textbooks. Even if you don't remember the exact dimensions, you should know that it goes along the dorsal rami, goes along the intercostal nerves, it goes along the medial arcuate ligament, lateral arcuate ligament, and which are places it usually present. Okay. Now, next is once you diagnose tuberculosis, what current anti-tuberculous treatment you will give? Same anti-tuberculous regime that is given. Who is answering? Because it is a notifiable disease, you are supposed to follow the rules of the government of India. So you should know what are the drugs that are given, how that is given. Answering. Divya, you interest somebody?
Ranjit?
Yeah, ideally we should start ATT. ATT according to the new regimen index TB guidelines. It is 2 months. 2 months of intensive phase. Which are isoniazid acid, rifampicin, and ethambutol. and continuation phase of HRE of 10 to 16 months, which is 10 to 16 months.
Is it category 1
ATT.
or category 2 now?
There is no category.
Viral tuberculosis, is it category 1 or 2?
അജിറാമുണ്ട് അനിത്തുണ്ട്.
So you should know everything regarding this because this is very commonly asked thing. So nowadays the DOTS regime, which was followed previously, have come with certain changes. Now it is called as 99 DOTS. 99 DOTS is the term that is used because it should reach at least 99% of the affected patients. Second change that has come, instead of various tablets, now we have got the fixed drug combinations. Okay, each drug will have got about 75 milligrams of rifampicin, 150 milligrams of I think 75 milligrams of INX, 150 milligrams of rifampicin, 270 milligrams of ethambutol, and the other is pyrazinamide. Okay, that is the one. I think I got a slide. Sorry. Yeah, these are the, so it is given for 8 weeks and the continuation phase FDC3 for 16 weeks. Okay. Then it can be, continuation phase can be increased to by 12 to 24 weeks depending upon the response as decided by the surgeon. That is the new regime that is followed. Okay. So you should know that. How is it monitored nowadays? How are these patients monitored? Who is going to answer? Ranjit.
Ankit.
Ankit, okay. So actually information technology is being used. Whenever the patient takes open the tablet, he has to give a call to the supervisor. Okay, and they will get an SMS also. And if they are not getting this SMS for 3 continuous days, they will have, the supervisor will have to visit the house to ensure that the patient is taking tablets. So it is the digital technology that is being used for ensuring compliance, unlike the previous observed regime that is followed. Okay. Then, sorry. Then what is spine at risk in children? Children spines in children.
Cases. Lateral translation, separation of the facet joints at the apex of the curve, lateral translation, retropulsion, posterior retropulsion,
Yeah.
and toppling.
So, what signs are there? Who described this?
Rajshekharan.
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 Because this is very commonly asked in the exam, you should know that. Okay. What is middle path regime?
By basically chemotherapy in 3 phases: intensive phase,
Yeah, that is.
continuation phase, and prophylactic phase. Then we have to take X-ray and ESR every 3 months.
That is not the middle path regime. Middle path regime is there are certain indications for doing surgery. What he believes is that you don't get a sequestrum in tuberculosis, unlike in the case of pyogenic osteomyelitis. You are getting only an infected bone which is living. Therefore, you give anti-tuberculous drugs, and for certain indications like neurological involvement, which he has given 4 or 5 indications which you should find out, he does advise a surgery. So there are 2 methods of treatment: entirely conservative, that is the old sanatorium regime, where these patients are put on certain body casts and shells and left in the sanatorium for years. And the second was the radical treatment of the Hong Kong regime, where they excised everything and put grafts. And at that time came the middle path regime by S.M. Tuli from Varanasi, where he advises a middle path between these two for those with absolute indications. That is commonly asked, what are the indications for surgery in tuberculosis of the spine? Who is going to answer that? At least tell 2 or 3.
Neurological recovery.
Yeah.
Or
Because neurological
neurological
is not an indication. The patient not responding to adequate conservative treatment, patient deteriorating on adequate conservative treatment. Okay. Then progressive neurology, flexor spasms that prevent the patients from lying down. So these are there are some more indications which you find out, okay, regarding the middle path regime. Okay. So when will you stop ATT? He said that the continuation phase can be continued for 12 to 20 months, but how will you take a decision regarding stopping of anti-tuberculous treatment?
Rashim?
So for this, the main thing is clinical, radiological, and MRI. Okay. So clinical, the symptomatic relief, no pain, no spasm. X-ray wise, there is sclerosis, ankylosis that is occurring. And the present one is MRI. MRI should not show any bone marrow edema. There should not be any fluid. And there should be obvious changes of healing and marrow replacing the diseased areas. So if you are interested, you can read the article by Anil Jain, which came in Indian Journal of Orthopedics regarding tuberculosis. He has done a lot of work in tuberculosis, including writing a book, and he has given it in details when to stop ATT. Okay. Because of the lack of time, I will not be able to do that. What is Alderman's gate? Who is answering?
It's seen in TB spine.
Yeah.
Can walk with head
Describe
on
the
just
gate. Describe-
backward.
You can describe the gate.
Navami?
Patient walks with the head and chest thrown backwards, with legs thrown wide apart.
Actually, you have to say that the patient will be having a lordotic posture with protruber and abdomen, flexion of the hips and the knee with legs wide apart, as if he is standing on a boat to balance himself. Okay, because he wants to avoid any movement transmitted directly onto the spine because it is very painful. What is point sign in tuberculosis? Somebody answer, because very little time is left. Already half an hour is gone. I have prepared 20 questions. So if you answer fast, we can complete 4 or 5 at least. Point sign in tuberculosis, that is usually given, taught in your undergraduate level.
Seen in pulmonary tuberculosis, sir.
Not pulmonary tuberculosis. It just means that if you put a coin on the floor and ask the child to take it, he will not be able to take it. He will have to flex his knees and hips and then take the coin. That is classically described, and it is given in DAS also. What is aneurysm of sign in tuberculosis? Who is going to answer?
Vertebral lesion that mimics aneurysm.
It mimics aneurysm. It is just Aneurysm sign is due to a cold abscess, anterior cold abscess between the aorta and the vertebral body. So what will happen? The aorta is pulsating all the time. So the pulsations of the aorta are transmitted through this abscess onto the anterior part of the vertebral body. This will produce an indentation, a smooth indentation anteriorly, and this is called as an aneurysm sign, described in tuberculosis. Okay. What is spinal tumor syndrome in tuberculosis?
This spinal extradural, there will be tuberculosis where there will be no radiological signs. No radiological signs of TB. There will be neurological deficits.
Yeah. So usually it can be an extradural, or sometimes a tuberculoma of the cord can also present in the same way as a spinal tumor. Radiologically, it will be normal. Only MRI will show the findings. So abscess, and this we have discussed, abscess in the iliac fossa. This also we have discussed. This is the Rajshekharan's, taken from Rajshekharan's article, and you should read this because it is very often asked. So tuberculosis of the spine is one thing which you should be thorough, because it can be asked anywhere. Yeah, either in your OSCE or your case scenario can be this, or it can be asked even in the Viva. So everywhere this is asked, and therefore you should be thorough with that. So who is the next person?
Jisham.
Isham. This is a 2 weeks old neonate. He came with a complaint that the mother says that the child is not moving the right lower limb. What inference can you make out of it? Two weeks old. Your child is in the neonatology unit. To tell something. What is the attitude that you are seeing?
Limb is in flexion, abduction, and external rotation, sir.
Yes, flexion, abduction, and external rotation. Along with that, there appears to be a swelling in the upper part.
Yes.
In the thigh region. And the child is not moving. So what is your, so here you can see that. So what is the possible diagnosis?
Infection of the joint.
Yeah, infection, what do you call that?
Septic arthritis.
Septic arthritis. Okay, that is a septic arthritis of the hip joint. You can see the child is not at all moving the lower limb. The other limb he is moving, but here it is not moving at all. And you can see a little bit redness also. The diagnosis you said, most likely it is to be a septic arthritis of the hip joint. Okay, the child is under your care. The child has come to the casualty. How will you confirm the diagnosis?
Anit.
Ultrasound.
Sir, I will do blood routine, then I will do a aspiration of the hip joint.
Okay, blood routine you will do. Okay. So what is Koch's criteria for diagnosis of septic arthritis?
Fever, inability to weight bear.
How much fever? Okay, fever, then what? Second. Somebody tell.
Ability to bear weight, ESR greater than 40.
Total count greater than 12.
Total greater than.
See, these are basic things which you should know. What is Koch's criteria and what is modified Koch's criteria? What is modified Koch's?
CRP.
CRP has been added. Okay. Read this, okay? Coach's criteria. How will you manage this child?
Navami,
Somebody-
Shinas,
Manage incision and drainage.
Yeah, that's the most
Arthrotomy.
important.
Arthrotomy.
Even if it's a negative arthrotomy, don't worry about it. And the diagnosis, you say the diagnosis regarding the diagnosis should be entirely clinical. Others can just give aid. Even if the ultrasound is taken and it is negative and you suspect septic arthritis, you have to do the surgery. Okay. So, what are the late sequelae of tuberculosis at this age group?
Persistent infection.
So, late sequelae of septic arthritis in a
Wandering hip joint.
Tom-Smith arthritis.
Tom-Smith arthritis.
Yeah. Tom-Smith arthritis is the name given for septic arthritis of infants, the neonates. Okay, I agree that. What are the late sequelae?
Dislocation of the hip.
Ankylosis. Absorption of the
Premature closure of the proximal femoral physis, pseudoarthrosis of the femoral neck, ischemic necrosis of femoral head, and contractures.
No, these things are not even in your any of these classifications like choice classification. So many classifications are there. You can remember that, isn't it? What is choice classification regarding the sequelae? Type 1 is a normal, type 1A. 1 is
normal radiograph.
a oxa magna. 2, it can produce
Oxa breve.
oxa breva, oxa valga, oxa vara, antiversion. Pseudarthrosis is type 3. Type 3 is a pseudarthrosis at the neck. Or type 4 is the one that usually produces. You have to say type 4 because it can produce almost total destruction of the femoral head. Total destruction of the femoral head, and you will get only a trochanter there. Or some remnants may be there, so it will prevent the head from going upwards. So you should remember one classification. Then the easiest one to remember is the choice classification. Only thing is, in choice classification, one is missing. What is that is missing there? Choice has not included one, which is ankylosis. Ankylosis usually doesn't occur in children. Why? See, you should understand that the end stage of infection depends on the amount of cartilage that is present in the femoral head. So in a small in neonate and infant, the whole thing is cartilaginous. Within 6 to 12 hours, the whole cartilage is getting lysed. Therefore, most of the other sequelae will not be seen. The only thing that is seen is partial or total destruction of the head. While in a child, more cartilage will be there. Therefore, what happens? It can, some remnant of the head will be there. So, but the gap is more. So, it can go into a fibrous ankylosis. Okay. And it can also. While in an adolescent and an adult, very little cartilage will be there. Therefore, when the cartilage is gone, bone-to-bone contact occurs. Therefore, ankylosis occurs. So, only in adolescents and adults, you get bony ankylosis. In children, you may get fibrous ankylosis. While in a neonate and infant, usually you get almost total destruction of the head. But if it in treated cases, you can get the other sequelae also. So what is not included in Choi's classification and included in Johari's classification is dislocation of the femur. Okay, at least you remember one classification regarding the only asked. Okay, when an X-ray of the can be seen, can be shown to you, and then they will ask how it has occurred. Okay, we'll go to the next one. Next person is going to answer as infant with deformity and lack of except for wrist and finger flexion. What is your diagnosis?
Brachial plexus birth palsy.
Brachial plexus birth. Brachial plexus birth palsy. Okay, good. What from the history, what do you think is the level of lesion? That is given and the posture that the child is having, what should be the level of lesion?
Upper trunk.
Which are the roots that are affected? See, the child is having internal rotation, extension of the elbow, flexion of the wrist.
Bob's palsy, C5, C6.
Yeah, it can be C5, C6, but you cannot distinguish between C5, 6 and C5, 6, 7 or an extended terps. Okay, because how it is the price, you need to look for triceps, but we cannot look at the triceps in a photograph. So it can either be, most commonly it is C5, 6 or C5, 6, 7. Describe the deformity and the reasons for its occurrence. Describe the deformity that you are seeing.
Internal rotation of the arm and forearm.
Internal rotation of the shoulder. What is the reason for that?
Deltoid.
Suprascapular node.
So which muscle is the internal rotator that is acting?
Yeah, subscapularis.
Acting. So which is the external rotation that is not acting?
Infraspinatus and teres main.
Yeah, so they come from C5, isn't it? Therefore,
Yes.
that is the reason for internal rotation of the shoulder. What is the reason for extension of the elbow?
Bicep. Paralysis of bicep.
Paralysis of biceps. And by gravity or by acting triceps, the elbow is kept extended. What is the cause of, what is the next deformity that
Adduction.
Adduction. Yes, adduction. What is the cause of that?
Paralysis of deltoid because of
Deltoid. Then what is the other deformity? Fourth one that you are seeing. Pronation of the forearm, isn't it?
Yes.
What's the cause of pronation?
Supinator weakness. Supinator weakness.
So which is the most powerful supinator?
Biceps.
Biceps. Bicep.
Biceps is parallel. That is why pronator. What's the cause of flexion of the wrist? Extension of the wrist is by which root? Very thorough with these things. Flexion of the elbow, extension of the wrist, and abduction of the thumb is by C6. Okay. C6 is not acting. That is why it goes into flexion. Okay. The fingers are flexed because finger flexion is by, long finger flexion is by which root?
C8.
C8. They are acting. So C8 and T1 are acting. C7 we are not very sure. But C5, 6 is definitely paralyzed. So that is how you interpret the various deformities that are found in birth brachial plexus palsy. So what is the most important prognostic sign that you will look for at 3 months?
Delta and
One of you
shoulder
tell.
abduction,
Pardon?
shoulder abduction and
No.
Contracture of internal rotation and the adduction.
No.
Abduction of the shoulder.
No. Most important
section of the elbow.
starting from 3 months to around 6 months, which will tell you that this nerve is going, this palsy is going to recover. I think it is Davids or somebody who has given a nice article regarding this, and it is given in almost all textbooks. Recovery of biceps at 3 to 4 months indicate a good prognosis. Okay. So you can, one more thing, what is the shoulder at risk sign in tuberculosis? Brachial plexus palsy? Do you know anything regarding that? Common complication that occur to the shoulder. One of you tell.
Posterior dislocation of shoulder.
Pardon?
Posterior dislocation of shoulder.
Posterior dislocation. So what are the features of posterior dislocation of the shoulder in children, small children?
Retroverted glenoids.
Yes, that are seen in X-ray. I am looking at here. So the child isn't.
Arm is adducted and internally rotated.
Yeah, that most of the palsy will be like that.
Progressive rotation.
So
actually, you can see a deep crease anteriorly, isn't it? In the shoulder. Are you able to see that anterior part of the shoulder? So that is a sign of posterior subluxation. Second thing is, when you are trying to externally rotate, the child usually cries. So it will be very irritable. And the third most important sign is the range of passive external rotation after stabilizing the shoulder. So when you are lying down, you will be able to stabilize it, bring the arm to the side and passively externally rotate. If the external rotation is less than 20 degrees, that indicates that there is a chance of posterior subluxation. And if there is if it is less than 10 degrees and some people say 0 degree, it means that the shoulder has already subluxated. Okay, that is a very, very important sign which you have to look for. What is the principle of treatment at 6 to 9 months of age? The biceps is not recovering. Who is going to answer?
Neurotization.
Somebody answer. My time is over.
Neurotization.
Neuralysis and neurotization.
Actually, you have to take an MRI. Okay. And if you find that there is a root avulsion, there is no point in waiting. Even at 3 months or before that, you have to do nerve surgery. What is the nerve surgery that is done for nowadays? What is nerve transfer? Nerve transfer.
Final accessory to suprastep.
Neurotization, nerve transfer. That is usually the fascicles which are taken from the ulnar nerve and put onto the musculocutaneous nerve. There are overlean ones and overlean two transfer. You have to read about that because that is one common surgery that is done nowadays because it gives reasonably good result. Then, suppose at this age group there is an indication if it is not an avulsion of the roots or it is a postganglionic lesion, you can explore. And there is a role for nerve grafting. Some people say that that is not necessary and you can do a nerve transfer straight away. Neurotization and nerve transfer appears to be the same, but there is subtle difference between that. You read about that. Okay. So you should know regarding this birth brachial plexus palsy. So what is
Sir,
seen?
excuse me, sir. Shall we go on to the clinical session?
Okay.
We
I'll
have
finish this and then.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir.
Yeah. What is your diagnosis? They are not answering. That is the problem.
Radial club hand.
Club hand, radial club hand.
Tell me the associated syndromes with radial club hand.
Holt
Holt
arm tar.
Holt arm syndrome.
Tar syndrome.
TAR syndrome.
Vectoral syndrome.
And
Charge syndrome.
what is the principle of management?
Polycization. Centralization.
First one,
Centralization.
centralization, and nowadays radialization of the ulna. And second is polycization, which should be done before 1 year if you want to get good result. What is the contraindication for surgical treatment or radialization?
Patient is already adapted with the deformity.
Yeah, that is old. It's a small child, isn't it? If the elbow is stiff, especially in extension, they will not be able to do anything if you do a radialization and make the wrist stiff. So elbow movement you have to assess before going into these. These are the various things. Stiff elbow is the one. Okay. So now we'll stop this. And even though I have prepared so much, there is no time to go through it. Okay. I'll just stop this. I don't know.
I think sir is having some problem with his connectivity. Actually, many of them we can't just recognize people. They are not using their real names. Please try to use your original names. Like many of them, now almost everyone has the names. Before it was a little haphazard. Like we couldn't make out who is who. So it will be nice if everyone uses their proper names. People should read and come, I think, rather than just.
But I have to tell you, because this is exactly what's going to happen. Sir is a regular examiner for DNB as well as MS. So the questions are asked is the typical way the questions are asked in the exam. So this is something I want to tell every candidate who is appearing. And I have to tell you again, the DNB results of all the specialties, including orthopedics, is not really good. So really need to work very hard, present as many cases. And the new OSCE pattern is also included a case scenario. And as well as, have you guys have seen the new OSCE pattern? OSCE pattern, the exam pattern? Anybody?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, Gopakumar sir is logging in right now.
Okay, okay. So then let's join that.
Okay.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Okay. So I'm in case scenario. The 13. Are you able to hear?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. We can hear you, sir, and we can see the slides also.
Frequent force while running. Answer. Who is there?
Tijin?
Or should I go through these whole slides in another 5-10 minutes? Because if the students are not eager.
Ranjit?
It appears to be bilateral genovalgum is there. So
it is a bilateral genovalgum. Okay. So what are the things that you want to get in the history when you are assessing a genovalgum?
Would like to ask for any history of any trauma, history of trauma in childhood, history of any
Bilateral
infections.
genovalgum. Why do you want to? What trauma do you suspect? Bilateral.
Any rickets history of
Yeah. Usually the metabolic causes you have to look into, isn't it? So you get now you can in a unilateral one you have to look for trauma, infection. In the family history, do you want to look for anything? Ask anything?
Whether similar angular deformities were present in the family, similar angular deformities
that run in families.
Osteogenesis imperfect.
That will not produce genovalgum, isn't it?
Skeletal dysplasias, storage disorders.
At least you have to say bone dysplasia and familial types of rickets, isn't it? Hereditary rickets, familial hypophosphatemic rickets. So these are bone dysplasias and familial rickets are the two things you have to ask for.
Polyarthralgia and rheumatoid.
Yeah, that is inflammatory. Look for any signs of inflammatory disorders like rheumatoid. What is this Cosen's phenomena? Cosen's phenomena, which can produce genovalgum. What is this Cosen's phenomena?
Late onset post-traumatic genovalgum.
Late onset due to what?
Metaphyseal fracture.
It is a metaphyseal fracture of the upper tibia that produce progressive genovalgum, but it usually subsides within a few years. Usually it is a self-limiting disease that can be asked, okay? And history of renal disease, nutritional deficiency, gastrointestinal problems, and muscle weakness. So these are the various varieties of rickets you have to ask for. Whether the child is having any history of renal glomerulonephritis, nephrotic syndrome, posterior urethral valve, hydronephrosis, then nutritional deficiency, gastrointestinal problems like Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis. Why muscle weakness is important? Why do you want to ask for whether the child is having difficulty in getting up from a sitting position in a genovalgum? Somebody answer.
Muscular dystrophy.
Not muscular dystrophy.
EFL.
All nutritional rickets will have proximal muscle weakness. Okay. The type of rickets that doesn't have that is familial hypophosphatemic rickets. The other types of rickets will have proximal muscle weakness or proximal myopathy. Okay. These are the things that you will look for. In the general examination, how will you proceed now? So this genovalgum child is there. In the general examination, how will you proceed? Do you want to look at the facies of the head of the skull?
Frontal bossing.
Frontal bossing. Only frontal bossing?
The closure of
craniotapes.
Craniotapes are seen in X-rays, isn't it? They are sutural bones that are seen in X-rays. Okay.
Closure of frontal.
So usually what you call as the frontal and parietal bossing, they classically describe it as a hot cross bun appearance because these are the fontanelle that is depressed and the frontal and parietal bones are bulging out. So this gives what is called as a hot cross bun appearance. Okay. When you look at the, what do you call this that you are seeing here?
Rachitic rosary.
Rachitic.
Rochatic.
Yeah. What is this that you find in the wrist?
Harrison groove.
In the wrist, Harrison's groove. Okay. In the chest, there is appears to be some.
Widening of the wrist.
Yeah. What's the cause of that widening?
Metaphyseal splaying.
Metaphyseal splaying, isn't it? A lot of osteoid is being produced, but there is no mineralization. So what will you look in the angle of these children?
Double malleoli sign.
Double malleoli sign. So you look for Harrison circus, Rackety rosary, metaphyseal thickening, double malleoli sign. So in the general examination, these things, apart from this, you have to look for evidence of dysplasia, which I will show in the subsequent slide. Now you will examine for genu valgum. What are the things that you want to look for in the genu valgum? The child you are going to examine, and this is your short case or the case scenario. So first, you quantify the genu varum. How will you quantify the genu varum? By intermalleolar distance. You have to take intermalleolar distance measurement both in lying down and standing. Don't forget to do this. Okay. Then lateral or anterior tibiofemoral angle. Then knee bending test to find out. First you quantify the deformity. Next you want to find out whether it is coming from the femur or tibia. For this you do the knee bending test. Then one problem with the genu valgum is patellar problems. So whether there is any patellar instability, you measure the Q angle. And always look for tibial torsion. How will you look for tibial torsion? Ranjit, Ankit or Ranjit, whoever is there. Which test will you do for finding out tibial torsion?
Thigh foot angle.
Thigh foot angle, okay. Then many of these cases will have a flat foot. Don't forget to do that. So these are the things you examine in the genu valgum. So you do this angle you can easily measure, okay? And with a goniometer, you can find out how much is the measurement. Then intermalleolar distance normally is said to be below 9 and above 9 is said to be abnormal. And you always do it when the patient is standing and lying down. Then the knee bending test is important because it helps us in yes or no?
Sir, whether it's femoral or tibial.
What is paradox bending test? You all read this article by V.K. Gautam from Delhi, flexion test in coronal plane deformity. What he says is that the rotation of the femur have something to do with it. You just stand up, slightly flex the knee and internal rotate. You find that you have got a genu varum. Okay, and you do the opposite. You will have a valgus. You can create a genu varum. Q angle, how will you measure it? Akhil,
ASA, we will mark a line from ASA to patella, center of patella, then patella to the tibial tuberosity, and we will mark the measure the angle in between.
usually you need to keep the knee in slight flexion. That is the most important thing. Okay. Then the range of movements you have to measure. So the first thing, these are the questions you need to ask in your mind. Is the deformity physiological or pathological? If pathological, what is the likely cause? How can we assess the deformity? What are the treatment options? How can we make treatment decisions? Okay. And first is the deformity real or apparent? That is the first thing. So, you all know this chart, isn't it? Selnius and Wencker's chart. When a child is born, they are born with varus. When they are around 1.5 to 2 years, the varus disappears and the limb is neutral at around 2 years. Then it goes into valgus and comes back to the normal alignment of about 7 degrees by age of 6 to 9 years. All of you should know this, okay? Selnius and Wencker's chart. So, physiological genu valgum and physiological genu varum are usually seen, genu varum is seen below 2 years, and up to the age of 3 to 6 years, you get this physiological genu valgum. Second, what if it is pathological? What is the etiology? You have to say etiology. So it can be due to metabolic bone disease, nutritional rickets, renal rickets, renal tubular acidosis, familial hypophosphatemic rickets, and renal, it is a repetition. Actually, it is a vitamin D dependent rickets. So these are the various types of rickets you should know because it is asked. Then asymmetrical growth arrest following trauma, infection, tumor, obviously like osteochondromas. So then bone dysplasia is another cause. The most common ones are the epiphyseal dysplasia and some form of metaphyseal dysplasias. Chondroectodermal dysplasia. The most important thing regarding this one, it is affecting mainly the tibia. So it produces lateral sloping of the tibia, which causes the genu valgum. Then endocrine causes like Turner's, inflammatory like in the general assessment, when you get such a case, don't forget to measure the stature of the child. Because even though it is a short case, if you go in a systematic manner, you will be able to complete all this. So the height of the child, then you look at the facies, whether there is any dysmorphic facies. You change of rickets, which we have already done. Look for proximal muscle weakness. Ligamentous laxity is very important. You look for ligamentous laxity. So these are the few things which you have to do in the general assessment. Anthropometric measurement is very important. The height of the child, upper segment, lower segment, height and span. This you should know. Second is the facies. If you just say dysmorphic facies rather than describing the facies, because it is very difficult at your level to identify each of that. Then changes of rickets we have already mentioned. Proximal muscle weakness indicate that there is a vitamin D deficiency. And ligamentous laxity, you do the Beaton score. So this is one of the facies. I just wanted to show it. This is a child with Freeman-Shelton syndrome or whistling face syndrome. You don't remember that. Then bone dysplasia, you see the height. Short stature. The upper segment is short. So It is a spondyloepiphyseal dysplasia. You don't need to diagnose it. You just tell that it is dysplasia. This is another boy with metaphyseal dysplasia. Again, you can see it is the limbs that are short. Then these are some of the familial hypophosphatemic rickets producing. This is another cause. Tumors, the osteochondromas can produce the same thing. So you have to palpate the bones to find out whether there is osteochondromas. This is one boy with infection, history of infection. You can see the severe genu valgum it has produced. Okay. So we have intermalleolar distance you have to measure, lateral tibial femoral angle, Q angle, patella, torsional profile, and flat foot. This you have to do it. This is just a repetition. Now coming to the investigations. Investigations, the examiner will ask you how will you proceed to find the diagnosis. Then if you are suspecting rickets, you need to know a few investigations to find out the cause of rickets. So the most important in the urine, you have to do the pH, glucose, amino acid. These three are important because pH is important. If the urine is alkaline, that means that the child may be having renal tubular acidosis. Okay, because the excretion of hydrogen ions by the distal tubule is affected. Then always look for serum calcium, phosphorus, and alkaline phosphatase. Alkaline phosphatase is raised in almost all forms of rickets except one condition. What is that? Who is telling? Alkaline phosphatase is increased in all forms of rickets except one. Hypophosphatasia. Then you have to look for renal function test because it helps us in identifying renal glomerular type of rickets. Then vitamin D level has to be assessed, ABG and parathormone. So these are the various things. So suppose the serum phosphorus is low, that means that there is phosphaturia or it is a familial hypophosphatemic rickets. Calcium may be normal, high or low in most of the varieties of rickets. So these are the various investigations that which you have to tell. In the X-ray, always say that you will take a long leg film. Why? When you take a long leg film, a few things you have to remember. One, the patient standing should be standing and the patella should be facing forward. Any limb length discrepancy is corrected by blocks so that the ilium or the iliac crest will be in a straight line. Okay, so the pelvic tilt is completely corrected. Then you take a long leg film. In the long leg film, you should nowadays, most of the examiners are fond of asking what is lateral distal femoral angle, medial proximal tibial angle. These angles, you should know. What is malalignment test? Okay. The first thing you have to look for is the mechanical axis deviation. So you draw a line from the center of the femoral head to the center of the ankle, whether it is deviated. Usually the mechanical axis will be deviated laterally in a genu valgum. That is called as MAD, MAD or malalignment test. Then you have to do what is called as the lateral, distal, femoral and proximal medial tibial angle, where you draw the joint orientation lines and measure this angle. Okay, these things you have to read and find out because otherwise I will not be able to tell because it itself take 1 hour to explain everything. Then you find the cora and the site where you need to correct. Okay. So the other features of rickets like this, you have to explain why there is a cupping. What is the cause of cupping? What is the cause of cupping? Somebody can tell? Is there anybody listening? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Then you tell what is the cause of cupping? What is the pathology in rickets?
Deficient mineralization.
So which layer of the epiphysis is affected?
Zone of provisional calcification.
Zone of provisional calcification. Up to the hypertrophic zone, it is normal. So what is happening? A lot of osteoid is being produced, but there is no mineralization. Because of the pressure on the osteoid, it produces this cupping and flaring. Okay. Then what are the problems in genu valgum? You can read this. Cosmetic. Genu valgum produces an ugly deformity. Then an inefficient and ugly gait. Usually they fall down frequently because that is why it is called as the knock knee. Patellar problems, patellar subluxations are common. Anterior knee pain is common, and degenerative arthritis occur because of the faulty weight bearing. So this is another thing that is asked. Why do you want to correct this? Why there is only genu valgum, he can walk around, why do you want to correct it? Then you have to say that these are the problems associated with it. Ugly gait, frequent falls, degenerative arthritis, anterior knee pain, and patellar problems can occur. Therefore, you want to correct this. See the gait in a genu valgum. See this man walking. He is around 40. See how difficult it is for him to walk. You can see. So this was a case of Ellis-Van Creveld syndrome, where it is usually the tibia, that is upper end of tibia, that is affected. Okay. You can see the polydactyly if you look carefully. Okay. Regarding the management, physiological genu valgum, you observe. Medical management in the form of vitamin D, you should know the dose and the frequency and how to manage a case of nutritional rickets, how to manage a case of familial hypophosphatemia rickets, because these are managed by nephrologists and endocrinologists, but you should know the principles. What is Scholl solution and what is Joule solution that is commonly used for this. Then role of orthosis, which is very controversial, but I usually give them. What is growth modulation by using 8 plates, then osteotomy, acute correction and slow correction. So this is the brace which I usually, it is a controversial thing, but I usually use that. Then this is the guided growth that is commonly done by using 8 plates, so that the growth on the medial side is reduced and the lateral side keep on growing. And only thing is you should have at least 2 years growth left for doing this procedure. This is another case with guided growth. Then various types of osteotomies. You should know what is a closed wedge osteotomy, what is an open wedge osteotomy. Nowadays, the most popular osteotomy is the RAB osteotomy. The examiners are fond of this RAB osteotomy. Okay. Then especially for the tibia, and the dome osteotomy for the femur. So this is one which we did the osteotomy. This was done years back. But nowadays we have got very good plates for doing this osteotomy. This is the one which we did last week actually. We got an excellent correction. You should know how to correct this. Slow correction by Elisaro, acute correction by using any of the methods by osteotomy and fixation by plates. Then you should know regarding growth modulation and regarding the conservative treatment. So this is how you evaluate a case of genu valgum. Any doubts? I think I have overshot the time. Divya, anything else?
That's okay, sir. Sir, if you have time, you could take the OSCEs which are left. Not today, maybe when you have time, it would be nice if we could cover it.
I'll do that because I have selected only 20, because I take classes for so many people. So I got a big collection of OSCEs. So see, the thing is, don't look for the new fancy things because they are rarely asked. OSCE is basically a clinical thing. For example, they will give a patient walking with a hand to knee gait, or a patient walking with a foot drop, or a patient having an antalgic gait, a crouch gait. So there are 6 or 7 videos where you should be able to identify the gait. A Trendelenburg gait, a stiff knee gait, then you have got a antalgic gait, you have got a hand knee gait. And each of these, there are a few standard questions. For example, in the hand to knee gait, what is the principle behind that? You have to say that the weight bearing axis or the usually passes anterior to the knee, it goes posterior to the knee. So you need to keep the knee extended. For keeping the knee extended, because the quadriceps is weak, you are pulling the femur backwards. So how can you correct it conservatively? Immediately you have to think of the flow reaction orthosis. And very rarely they may ask surgery. How will you correct? Can you correct it by surgery? Yes, it can be corrected by doing an upper tibial extension osteotomy. So these are the few things that you should understand. For example, foot drop gait. What are the changes happening in the rockers of the foot or in the gait cycle during this foot drop gait? Like that, they will ask certain questions which looks which all of you know, but the question is framed in such a manner that only few people can answer it. That part comes only as one part of a question. At least if there are 4 questions, 3 can be answered by everybody. But one question will be difficult. Okay, don't worry about that question and try to go for common things. That is the advice which we are going to give. Thank you. Anything?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
It was a very useful session. Hope next time onwards, more people will be actively answering your questions.
Yeah, that's the problem everywhere. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for the wonderful session.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you all. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, everybody. Good night.